Welcome to the Perfect Life Awakening Show, hosted by Royce Morales. Royce has been a transformational facilitator, teaching groundbreaking, spiritually based courses for more than 4 decades. She is the author of 3 books about her teachings. Join Royce as she takes you on a journey into how to live your best life and find your true purpose through discovering the origins of subconscious, disempowering notions and releasing them. She talks with experts and inspiring people just like you who learned to trust their intuitive inner wisdom, which led to life-changing shifts. Today, her guests live an empowered existence and are helping change the world to a higher consciousness place based on truth and love. You deserve to awaken to, align with, and embody your true self and live a life filled with love. Transform yourself from triggered to empowered and create your perfect life. Here is your host, Royce Morales.
Hello, welcome to my show. I just have to say that it's not often that I invite people back to be on my show, but this particular guest was so wonderful the last time, and I got so many great comments about her that I said, I just have to get her back. So I did. And let me just introduce her. Let me remind everybody a little bit about Debbie Dobbins before she just jumps in and starts talking up a storm. I just love how you talk. So inspiring. Okay, so Debbie's life went from addiction, cancer, broke, and living on food stamps to a globally acclaimed international prosperity consciousness speaker and teacher. This radical reinvention not only healed her body and rebuilt her wealth, she imagined what true success means. And now she shares it with others. And I think that's such an important thing that you do. She reveals how to awaken your natural prosperity consciousness, which we all have in there, buried. It's all there. And it, as you call it, your inner billionaire, for real sustainable wealth, by teaching that abundance is not reserved for the few. You know, how many of you feel that it's just reserved for those special people? So she says that it is our birthright, and it's, of course, hidden under layers of limiting beliefs, patterns, social conditionings, fear, guilt, all of that stuff. And she wrote another book. Last time we were talking about her first book, and this is her second book, and it's called Rooted in Wealth, Investing Beyond Money. So today, we're going to talk about investing, which is really not what you think, I have to say, because this is a very spiritually based program. And, why is she talking about investing? So she's going to talk about that because it's really beyond money. It's about investing in your soul, investing from a soul-connected place and deserving to receive prosperity. So I think it's interesting to mention that her books are both about awakening your natural prosperity consciousness, aligning with universal principles. I think that's so important. Creating sustainable abundance, discovering and living from a place that you know that the universe is abundant, just like nature, it just keeps recreating itself. And that we are part and one with the universe. That is so important to remember. If the universe is abundant, we can be abundant too. One of the things that Debbie has said, which I wrote down because I love it, is that money is God in motion. I just think that's important. And it's probably one of our most important relationships. You know, we might think it's with our spouse or our best friend or our dog, whatever, but it's about money. We have such screwy relationships with it, which I hope you get into today. So thank you, Debbie, for being here. I'm so glad that you're here. Now, first of all, before we get into all of your beautiful information about soul-centered investment, tell us your story. How did you get into all of this?
It's very interesting. I am writing a talk to be given at UCLA in a couple of weeks, and I was reflecting on people ask me this all the time. When did you start down on this path? Because our path is much like Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. There are going to be dragons. There's going to be ogres. We all have this opportunity. And I write in my first book, you're your inner billionaire. Oops, I can't see that. Your inner billionaire. And that's the to ignite the frequency of that abundance within us. But I talk about those dragons that I've explored in my life, which are drug addiction, owing the IRS. They had a lien on me of $500,000, which you can't do anything with an IRS lien. And then being diagnosed with rectal cancer and thriving after that, and then rebuilding my wealth after being broke and on food stamps. Those things created who I am today. And then I began to look back a little further. And I remember when I was in fifth grade, I read the book Charlotte's Web. And I thought, oh my gosh, that is such a beautiful metaphor for where I ended up in my life. And all those principles, just like everybody else's stories about anything, and particularly money, were downloaded. And the optimism, even though I was going through all those experiences, I knew that at any time that I made a decision, I could create something else. And I believe that we all are on these paths. And the more I talk to women and coach clients, I hear these stories of that we have all been through these transitions. We said, oh, we learned that we had to do certain things in order to be the perfect human, whatever that ends up being. And then we get to a certain point in our lives where we go, is that all there is? And I feel like this calling, there's a great song by an artist named Jamie Lou that says, something's calling me deeper. And I really believe that we start out that way and then we forget. And then along the journey, we pick up some breadcrumbs because on this hero's journey, we're being led somewhere and we're going to run into some obstacles. And it's how we deal with those that will season us, if you will, because we can just pull the covers up over our head and say, I don't want to do this anymore. Or we can say, this is fire that's um, refining me to become the person that I'm ultimately here to be, because I believe that everyone has a purpose here. Every single entity, sentient being has a purpose. And what is that? How do I serve this beautiful world that we live in? And as you said in the very beginning, we're all part of nature. We're all one. So if we're all one, we're all looking at ourselves, which is so fascinating, because in the time that we live in where people are pointing fingers like, I don't like you because, and I think you're talking to yourself, because we are all one. We are one in this thing called nature. And it is our right, our birthright to be this abundant self. So I've been on a hero's journey, multiple different paths, wonderful. At the time, they may not have seemed so wonderful. And yet I knew even when I was going through them, the hardest times, they were the idea that Charlotte shared with the pig of Wilbur. It's you're a great being. And I'm going to show the world and be very direct about it with my language, because one of the messages in Charlotte's Web is the speaking. She wove in her web these beautiful sayings like fantastic and some pig. And we have lost that notion that our words are so powerful beyond measure, and that those are just a reflection of who we are being inside. And words are one of those things that I will talk about as we talk through this together today, that those are what build who we are, who birth who we are. Because if we're not paying attention to those words, those language, those thoughts, those emotions, and we're just doing it on autopilot, we're going to get the same results that we have been getting for whatever the previous years or days or hours of our lives were before. So my life has been it's not a straight line. Life isn't a straight line. It's up and down and all around. And when we begin to say, this is the beauty of it, because without darkness, we don't have light. We can't understand it. With light, we don't see darkness. So we live in a world of duality. And yet we want to say one of these dualities is wrong or bad, or we don't like it. When the truth is, let's just love it all. Let's just love every single juicy minute of it. And when we get to the end, we leave without what most people say on their deathbed is they regret not doing something, because this is the ultimate idea, because we are not guaranteed one more minute on this life, not one more minute. So what are we investing in? How are we investing in ourselves? So that's the message I want to talk about today, is how do we invest in life in general?
So let's talk about that, because basically, how do you define or redefine investing in your language? What does that mean to
Right.
you?
So I love the idea that investing, particularly for women or even people that don't even understand money, because the first book that I wrote was Your Inner Billionaire, and it's designed to be a trilogy. Your Inner Billionaire is to ignite your frequency. Then Rooted in Wealth is to begin to understand how you invest in life. And then the last one will be the Time Bender, because what we all want is more time anyways. That's where we believe freedom is. I've learned that from talking to people. And so investing, what most people don't understand is that investing is not that hard if you drill it down to it's a return on the investment. What is your return? But also, what's a return on your integrity? Because we are not paying attention to what we do every single day to create the outcome that we will see tomorrow. Because if we understand the concept of consciousness and metaphysics and quantum physics, whatever we do right now creates the next moment. That is creating our reality. So if we want to create a reality that has more wealth in it, more abundance, more health, more joy, we have to invest right now. So how do we do that? The return on our investment is our reality. That's as
Mhm.
simple as you can make it. And so when we break it down that way, people get confused that investing is only investing in the stock market or a 401k or real estate or passive income, which those are all brilliant ideas. And I have taught those for decades. And anybody that has a money story that's limiting or poverty based, I don't care how many tools or ideas I can share with them, they will continue to push them away from their unconscious and not receive anything as a result of it. Because I've heard
Yeah.
many, many stories. Well, you taught me how to invest in real estate, but every deal that I have falls apart. Well, okay, that's because the story is still running. So that's why I always share, do the igniting first, which is that frequency, which is the inner billionaire. And then we talk about investing, because investing, as I said, can be so many different paths. And the thing that I share so often with women and men as well is that we've all relegated ourselves to this idea of time for dollars. That's not our value. But when we strip the time for dollars away conversation, and we say, I am worth this much, meaning you can put a dollar figure on it, which is just a symbol. But when we begin to say, I am so valuable, the universe says, because it always responds with the answer yes. It's like improv. If you've ever learned improv, what you say in improv is yes and. You never say no to your partner in improv. This is what the universe does for us. It says yes and. And so if I say I am worthy, I am valuable, I trust myself, then the universe says yes and what else would you like? But if I am unconsciously saying I'm not worth, you know what, it says yes and I'm going to give you more of that, because that is really simply what is happening here. So when we invest, it's about looking at what kind of return on investment am I giving myself. So I'm going to use an example that's very common these days, and that's constantly scrolling on social media. Like that's the thing of that's our age of Aquarius, if you will. And so investing in that kind of action does not have a return on investment. I can assure you. Well, it has an investment. It's a different kind that you don't necessarily enjoy, because literally we're not investing in ourselves when we're doing that. We're investing in other people's ideas to allow them to influence us. So the first idea of investment is to take radical responsibility for our actions, whatever those might be, because there's so many different ways to invest, not just financially. But going back to the time for dollars example, I always encourage anybody that starts down this path to begin to look at how can I expand my value receiving vehicle. Because if I am going to a job, I call it just over broke, JOB. If I go there, I'm going to get this dollar amount that says you work this much time, you get this much money. And that is what I call a fixed income. We've often said fixed income is if you're on Social Security or Medi-Cal. The fact is it's really a job. So when we invest in ourselves, we begin to expand our bucket of receiving. So what might that look like? Becoming an entrepreneur or becoming somebody that understands passive income, because that's a form of investment. So you could invest in things like stocks or real estate, 401ks. You could create something and get royalties. But once we began to expand our bucket of receiving, then we receive more. But because we limit it, then we receive less. And so one of those paradigm shifts is what I talk about in the first book, Your Inner Billionaire, but then I take it to this next level in Rooted in Wealth. So the first place you want to start is, how do I invest to begin with? You invest in yourself. That's the very first thing. I wouldn't say go from zero to I don't know anything investing and then go buy investment real estate. Oh, that can be done, but it's about how am I investing in me every single day? And when you root yourself in that wealth principle of how am I investing in me, then things begin to shift and morph, and then opportunities will begin to show up.
Can you give us an example of what you mean by investing in you? What does that look like?
So every day when you wake up, you can ask yourself, what would be a good opportunity for me to invest in myself? So there's basic components of our life. There's our spiritual life. There's our health and our body existence. There is wealth. There are relationships. So those main four categories, we begin to look at how are we building and investing in those areas. So for example, and I always share this example about health, because we cannot begin to feel a sense of freedom or a sense of wealth if we are sick. Like I know that because I was. And it was a time where I used it to invest in myself. During that time, even though I was laid flat on my back and going through treatment, I spent the majority of my time meditating. That was one of my healing processes. So that in and of itself was an investment in me. So for health purposes, we could invest in meditation. We could invest in walking. We could invest in moving our bodies in a new way. We could invest in the way we put food or nutrition into our bodies. We don't think of those things. We put them in categories like I should do this and I will be healthier. Instead of saying, this is how I decide to invest in me. If I decided I want to invest in relationships, I have to begin to examine what relationships are not giving me a return on my investment. So I know that everybody listening has had relationships or may have current relationships that are not feeding their soul at all. As a matter of fact, they're draining them on a daily basis. So somebody that has a boss or a coworker that just every time they walk into that environment, their whole energy level goes down. They start to feel unhappy, depressed, upset, whatever version of feelings that is. So we have to begin to see what relationships do we have in our life that we are not using to support, to get a return of investment, which says, I'm supported by people that encourage me. I'm supported by people that support me. I'm supported by people that give me happiness and joy. Because all of these things, we don't really pay attention to them. We think we do, but then we put ourselves in all these different circumstances, whether it be with our money or our health or our relationships or even our spirituality. I meet so many people that are spiritual, right? And yet they'll say one thing on one conversation, and then they are completely out of alignment with their spirituality or what they're professing in a different conversation or in a different environment. So that is part of being congruent, investing in what are my core values, because the values will determine what your spiritual life is all about. And looking at how am I creating even a mission statement about my values so that I live only from that space instead of being pulled in any direction by whoever you happen to be around at any point. So there are so many of these areas of our lives that we are not paying attention to and saying, how am I investing in me to get a return on that investment so that I grow in those areas of my life?
So back to relationships, and I don't mean to say this in an argumentative way, just as kind of like the way I look at things spiritually. If I'm in a relationship that doesn't feed my soul or, gives me a return on my investment,
Right.
um, I find that there's a reason for that. There's something I need to see
Mhm.
about myself. Why have I attracted somebody that doesn't feed my soul? Why have I chosen somebody that triggers me all the time or whatever it is? So that in a sense is a return on my investment that I get to hear, I get to find out what that
Yes.
person is reflecting to me so that
Yeah,
I can
absolutely.
change that story from within and either stay with that person and feed my own soul
Yep.
or find somebody that, fits the bill, shall we say. So
No, I agree with that 100%. And I was actually I was on a call yesterday, and a woman that I was interviewing, we were talking about this very thing about relationships. That every relationship, she wrote a book, something, the 7 steps on how to heal a bad relationship. I can't remember the exact title, but I said, "Oh my God!" So you wrote a handbook on that, right? How to have a bad one, but how to go through them, because every relationship is there as a teacher. And I had a spiritual teacher one time years ago say to me, relationships are grist for the spiritual mill. So if you think
Yes,
about that, though, that's an investment as well.
yes,
A mill would be an investment for a farmer to take whatever crops they have to turn them into something else so that they could sell them at market for a higher price. So that really is, think about that trajectory. That is an investment. So the investment, as you just said, is, what is the grist that I am creating? How is this relationship here to serve me? Because I'm not suggesting that if we have relationships in our life that are incongruent with who we are, that we just ignore them or walk away from them, because
right.
wherever you go, there you are. So we
Yeah,
will get to experience it again. And they are there to help us invest in ourselves, to look within, to look into our own spiritual nature, to look into our stories that we tell ourselves. And then I have also said many, many times in my life, if you have more of an attachment to something, an emotion, particularly from another person, that is above or around above what you feel around your bedroom slippers, then that's where the work is. That's where the insight is, because I believe that triggers are one of our best portals. When
yes,
somebody triggers you, that is an opportunity to say, oh my gosh, why is this triggering me? Because it's always about us, anyways. We are just reflecting those people. But also, as you said, I want to say, why did I create this reflection? Because there's something within me, but that is the investment. How do I heal whatever's inside of me that I am projecting that outward? It's
yes,
never about them, but it's also the key to what's happening. What am I? Why am I seeing this? Because it's not about shame. Also, I think people get confused when I have this
yes,
conversation that I'm bad or wrong because I created it. The truth is, it's just information. It's
yes.
just information. And I actually had somebody yesterday text me about something that I had sent a text, and I love Don Miguel Ruiz's book, The Four Agreements, right? One of the four agreements is, don't take anything personally. So when
Yes,
we can detach ourselves from the personal attachment and the trigger, then we can begin to invest in who we are. She was very upset that she felt that I wasn't appreciative because I had just been, rudimentary in my text. But here's the thing is, I can't take responsibility for anybody else's feelings either. I think that's one of the most important things that we must learn as humans, is that what other people think about us is none of our business. And that doesn't mean that we're callous. It doesn't mean that we're detached. It just means that I'm responsible for me. I'm responsible for my feelings, my actions, my thoughts, and my words. And if I take full responsibility for those coming from that place of love, then there isn't anything for me to do besides that, other than to reflect on what is happening if I'm triggered. But
yeah.
you're right, absolutely. Those are grist for the spiritual mill. I love that about relationships.
Yeah, I've never known the translation of that saying. I always use it, but yeah, that's funny.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
So you talk about stories, the stories that we tell
Hmm.
ourselves, which is why we manifest poverty and all that stuff. How do you help people not only get in touch with the story, because I think that getting in touch with it is really important. It's like it
Yes.
opens a portal, but to get to the point where they resolve it, do you assist people in that?
Yeah. So there's two schools of thought on this idea of, do I need to go back and know what caused the story? Because
Hmm.
I like that. I like that modality. And at the same time, I will say it is not necessary, because here, I know this is a really strange example, but I had this thought the other day. I was out walking by the lake, and I had just done an activity with some women, and we were looking at pictures to evoke emotions. And one of the emotions that was evoked in me was looking at some very turbulent water. Now, I have had this undeniable sense that water in its power is almost a scary thing to me. I don't like to drive over bridges that go over water. And I've always said, isn't that interesting? Because this could be intergenerational. It doesn't mean that it happened in this lifetime. This is what's important to know, is that all of our beliefs don't just start in this lifetime. They are generational. So I'm walking by the lake, and I'm sort of having a conversation with myself, which is, the universe. And this thing came up for me, that I had this flash of a memory when I was a kid of this neighbor who had a pool. And I remember that he always used to push us under, and I felt I mean, like I was drowning. And so I thought, well, isn't that interesting? I wonder if those two things are connected, because everything is just downloaded into this place called subconscious, which is the womb where we put all of our beliefs, that we have experiences that create them, but then they're also delivered through the generations. And I thought, that could be. And yet it's not, I knew at that moment it wasn't that important for me to identify that. I just need to know that this is uncomfortable for me, that I have a very deep respect for water. I mean, if I'm in the ocean and it's turbulent, I don't disrespect it. And yet it's one of those beliefs that I carry with me. And it's not something that's impacting my life per se, even though I do, uh, I clam up, because we do have that fear reaction when we have certain experiences in our life. So it's the same thing, though, that fear of when I'm driving over a bridge when there's water involved, that same clenching is the thing that I want to release, because somebody could have that same fear reaction just taking care of paying their bills. Literally, it's that thing that we do that locks us up in the physical form, that then is the electromagnetic energy that has all the cortisol get released, and these chemicals in our body. So just becoming aware of how we're feeling is the first step. And that story, we can uncover it. We can begin to dissect it. We can tease it out. And sometimes that's very helpful. Sometimes it's helpful to do age regression, meaning multiple lifetimes going backwards. All of these modalities work. I mean, energy is energy. And when we tap into the desire to heal whatever is in us that is keeping us from enjoying life to its fullest, there are so many different modalities that I don't feel as if I'm attached to any of them. I believe that everyone knows innately, because their intuition will guide them to their answers. And I always do meditations with the Akasha field, because the fact is that we all of the answers are available to us for everything. Every single question we could ever want. And I find it also interesting that people are out there promoting that they can take you on the journey to show you what's in the big library, as I call it, the consciousness library. I don't need a guide. I am my guide. So I think that's really one thing that I want to make sure that I clearly state to everybody. This is a self journey. This isn't, anybody can help you. Like the hero's journey, you can get guides, right? You can have mentors that lead you through your hero's journey, and using a mythical example, but it's us. We are the heroes in every single one of these scenarios. We save ourselves. So all of that comes from our knowingness, our intuition, our connection to the oneness. So once we get that clear, because we're always searching for somebody to help us, people can show us, but we ultimately are the arbiter and make the choices. So I really think it's important for people to understand that no matter what modality you use, I mean, there are crystals, there are affirmations, there are oracle cards, there are, energy healers. There's so much out there, and I love them all. And yet, something will resonate with one person, then another person goes, "Oh, that's too woo-woo for me." So
Yes.
okay, that's fine. We don't do that one, because everybody has their own frequency of what trajectory they're on. And so opening up to hearing your own intuition, that's really the first step. Is we have so many influencers out there in the world right now that people are looking and seeking through them when the answers already lie right here. So it's tapping into our own knowingness is the very first step.
Yeah. And sometimes people need to hear it from somebody else so that they can believe it about themselves
Yeah.
too. So, yeah.
Yeah. And if
Well,
you're using it for that, that's great. But if you're using it because that's going to fix me, that's a different energy.
yes, absolutely. Yes. So I'm talking with Debbie Dobbins, and we'll take a little bit of a break and we'll be right back and talk about more. I want to talk about universal laws because you mentioned that in some of your work, and I'd like you to talk a little bit more about that in terms of investing. We'll be right back.
Om Times TV. Do you crave joy but feel stuck? Do you go through life feeling constantly triggered and frustrated? Fear is likely the culprit, and subconscious fear is likely sabotaging you. Perfect Life Awakening is a time-tested, spiritually based approach to inner transformation created by Royce Morales. For over 40 years, she has helped people get to the origins of subconscious fears and ultimately help them find their true purpose and a life full of joy. Sign up for Perfect Life Awakening today at roycemorales.com. You deserve to go from triggered to empowered, shifting your life with Perfect Life Awakening. Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. Om Times Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, Om Times offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an Om Times magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on Om Times TV and broadcasting it across the extensive Om Times radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. Om Times. Open yourself to the possibilities.
I want to eat apples and bananas. I need to eat apples and bananas. Why can't I eat apples and bananas?
Support the Feeding America nationwide network of food banks to help provide meals to those in need. Join us at feedingamerica.org.
Welcome back. I'm talking with Debbie Dobbins, talking about soul-based investment and all kinds of interesting information. You talk about the importance of understanding universal laws. And one of those laws, I believe it's a law, is the law of integrity, that where you come from, your level of integrity, your level of responsibility and not blaming and doing all that stuff that you talked about earlier really manifests. That if you're coming from a place of, I'm going to take advantage of somebody, or I'm going to do something illegal, something like that, the integrity is off and the universe reflects that in some way. So talk about that a little bit, the universal laws and integrity.
So I want to start this conversation about universal law using universal laws that everybody understands. So gravity. Everybody that lives on the planet, even if you don't even understand the concept of gravity, it's like, oh, okay, if I drop that, that's what happens. I mean, gravity is a universal law. You cannot change it. It doesn't say, oh, you don't want it to be that way. We'll just change that for you. Electricity is one of those things. Thermodynamics. These are universal laws. And the way that they operate is on, the Bible uses this phrase, it rains on the just and the unjust alike. So the very first thing I want to talk about is that principle that it's not a judger. Universal laws does not judge. It just responds. And as I said earlier, it says yes, and here is the way you input it. This is how it's coming out. So when it comes to understanding that universal law in the consciousness, and we'll use the word manifestation for lack of a better word, because it really is just creating the form. The form is created in our reality, the way that we feel it, our vibratory frequency. So whatever our frequency is, that is what is going to be outpictured. So if you want to know what your frequency is, look around you and you're going to know. So there are vibratory frequencies for things like love, hate, jealousy, compassion. All of those have a frequency. And there was I'm going to forget his name, but there was a gentleman in Japan that did these experiments a number of years ago where he put words of labels on water. And then they froze the water in the crystals. And I mean, it's just kind of remarkable how the distortion in the crystal formation is so different with the negative words. So it's already been defined that certain energies and feelings and words have low vibratory signatures and other ones have high vibratory signatures. So in order for us to experience those things, we will have those downloaded into what I call the subconscious womb. So there's two levels of consciousness. One is the consciousness that we're daily actively engaging in, and the one is the subconscious, which runs the programs. And so if we want to change this program, the subconscious program, because it's the one that's leading the way, this is the law part. It says, I'm just going to reflect to you what you've put into me. So you can do as many affirmations as you want, but if you don't believe it and download it into the subconscious womb that says, this is where we're creating from, then you will continue to get exactly what's downloaded into that subconscious womb. So when we begin to look at, okay, what am I downloading into my subconscious womb? You have to get past the conscious layer. When I've taught and did hypnosis in the past, hypnosis teaches us, which it's just now science, that there are levels of your brainwave patterns. So we have beta, which is what we operate in. You can't get past the beta brainwave patterns to get to the subconscious womb. You have to get in alpha, theta, delta is really great if you can meditate to that. That's what Tibetan monks do. But you have to get into those brainwave patterns in order to imprint a new idea, because it's in the receptive state. There's one other way that you can download into the subconscious womb so that you change the feelings, because the feelings are all encoded in our body. So the consciousness, this is the universal law. It says, whatever you believe, this is what Jesus said, you are as you believe. Well, people think, well, that's this. It's not, it's this. This is the real truth of who we are. This is what we are showing up in the world as. So when I talk about money stories, we uncover what your true beliefs are around money, because everyone would say, I want to be rich, right? Well, then why aren't you? It's not a want, because as soon as you say the word want, that signals to this universal law a lack mentality, because that says I want something, what does that say? I don't have it.
Yeah.
We have to begin to say and declare who we are and then become that, because that is the beingness of this universal law. So as you said, there are people that have whatever motive, right? So it doesn't really matter what the motive is for us as humans to see. It's whatever they're believing internally. And then that's going to be replicated in form for whoever that is. And I think one of the things I always get a conversation about is, especially with a book called Your Inner Billionaire, there's billionaires out there and they're greedy. I'm like, okay, but they also have a consciousness that says, I'm creating wealth. Now, I don't purport to say I know what's going on with those people. Like Justin Bieber, I watched a documentary not too long ago that said he's extremely unhappy and he's made $1 billion. I don't know. We're very holistic beings. We are a whole package. We aren't just one aspect of ourselves. We're not just our wealth or our health or our spirituality or any of these categories. We are all one whole, and we are as a people one whole. So how are we impacting the whole? But consciousness is the universal law. It says whatever goes in, whatever the belief is, it's coming out in form. There isn't a way for us to make that change, just like we can't change gravity or electricity. And the universe doesn't say you can have it and you can't. It doesn't. It doesn't judge. This is why the stories in the Bible are very much, for me, metaphors and representations of what we believe that God is. These are stories that are passed on, orally. But the fact is that there's nobody judging us except for us. Nobody. There is no judge and jury. It's only us.
Yes. So, so in other words, if you are getting money or earning money or manifesting money, and your intention is to screw people over in some way, your integrity level is out. But if you feel okay with that, then you still manifest money.
Absolutely. I mean, I can't control somebody's motivation. That's one that I find interesting is I know that we're moving in a direction with AI and all these other things and evolution. We ultimately will be able to connect through a thought process. Like they've done movies about it where people can read each other's minds. What is it? Something with Mel Gibson and women that he walked by and he could hear what their thoughts were. We're going to be there someday. I know that. And I feel like intuitively sometimes I can walk down the street and hear somebody's thoughts. But until we get to that place, at this point in time, we don't have the ability to look inside another human being's soul and say, what is your motivation? We just don't have that ability. We may say as humans, because that's what we do as humans, we judge things. This is, I put them in a category, we put it in the category of black or white or good or bad or any version thereof, but it just is. That's why I love that phrase in the Bible. It says it rains on the just and the unjust alike. Like there is no differentiation. It's their experience. It's my experience that has been reflected back to me. And because I see somebody else's experience, they're also part of my reflection. This is what's so fascinating, is that we're all in this together and we're all seeing our own reflection. And so when we don't claim that we're looking in the eyes of God, we're also declaring that we're not God, which we all are. We are a unique expression, a divine, unique expression of the one, which is God. It's just a word because it's consciousness. But that's why I love the idea that we are all here together as one. And yet we live in this world of duality that we've all been imprinted with this idea that we're different. We're not. We are not different. We're all made out of the same stuff. We all, the whole thing about we put our pants on the same way. And we also love and desire love because this is our nature. We are community connected beings. And yet it's been distorted, and we can buy into the distortion, which is just another story, or we can say, I know the truth. And if I know the truth, and then I begin to look at everybody with the eyes of love, as God, what a shift that would be if everyone was doing that. But it starts with us. We have to start being, what did Gandhi say? Gandhi said, be the change you want to see. So everybody's trying to change everything outside of us. When, where does it start? Right here, right here.
Yes. Tons of questions are emerging. So let me see. Which one should I grab? You mentioned before we got on this podcast, you were talking about how a lot of women have a hard time with making investments because they've kind of handed over their power either to the male figure in their life or some expert. Talk about that a little bit. How can we get past that?
So I grew up in a time where literally women were not even allowed to make financial decisions alone. They couldn't have a credit card. They couldn't own in certain states, particularly, they couldn't own a house in their own name. They had to have everything put through their husband or a male family member. So once again, it's generational. It's been imprinted. And so I believe that we are shifting and morphing, but there's still, for example, a lot of women in my age category that are, I call them the Goldens, right? And they have bought into that story, that idea. And now what happens is they get to be 50, 60, 70 years old, and the spouse, the husband, who had all the financial decision making, they're left and they don't have a clue. They're lost. So it really begins with early on. And so I always recommend, and not to be covert about it, but that a woman, even if you're in a relationship and all of you delegate or relegate all of your responsibility to a man, which is fine, that you have your own established financial nest egg, if you will, for lack of a better word, because what you want to do is begin to learn and practice how money works. This is where the disconnect comes from. And I really believe that we as humans, but particularly as women, we have outsourced so much in our lives because we don't understand it. So whether it be a legal proceeding, a health situation, we outsource it. Here's a lawyer. They know more than I do. The law is just reading a book. I mean, literally, I think I just got the benefit of working for lawyers at an early age. And I went, oh, you guys just read the rules. Like the rules are all printed somewhere. But this is the thing. And now with the internet and AI, you can figure everything out. But we've delegated our financial responsibility. Even if you are an independent woman and you give your responsibility over to, say, somebody is a 401k manager, an investment person, but you don't know what they're doing. This mystery. I love living in the mystery of the universe. Like I'm always waiting for the universe to show me what the next surprise is. But when it comes to life, there's some areas that we should not just delegate. At least we should know what we're delegating and say, explain this to me because I don't understand what you're doing. So beginning this process of just getting a simple foundation of how does money work? I have assets, I have liabilities, I have credit cards, I have bills to pay. And how do I multiply my money? What is passive income? What is an investment? Don't jump into something tomorrow. Begin to uncover and educate yourself on how does money work, because money is really a fascinating thing. It again is something that is almost like a universal principle. It has certain ways that it functions. And if we understand that, because this is I love the Bible from some of the stories. One of the stories is about the talent. And so a gentleman that had a farm or whatever he had in the Bible, and he gave to his employees, he gave each of them 3 talents. One of them buried it, one of them held on to it, and one of them invested in it. And so when the owner came back, the guy that buried his money, he said, you don't get any more. The other one said, that's probably not the best way just to save it, to hold on to it. The one that invested is the one that got all the praise, because what it is taking money loves to work. They're like dogs. I saw your puppy behind you. There's certain dogs in the world that are work dogs and they love to work. That's what money is. It loves to work for you. And so if we learn that aspect and we begin to utilize it that way, then money will blossom, money will grow. And it isn't about driving and struggling and doing all the things for time for dollars anymore. It's allowing money to do the work for us. And then we sit around, and that's when I bring in time bending, because then we sit around and say, how do I want to create more time for my life so that I can be free?
So what about the I call it the give receive cycle? If you give, you receive. Talk about that a little bit. We only have a few more minutes, so tell us a little bit about how you feel about that.
That's the law of circulation. That is the law of wealth and abundance. So it's just a circulation. It's a circle. It goes around like a hose. And so when we block one of the either the receiving channel or the giving channel, then we crimp the hose. So if you've ever had a hose that you have in your backyard and you crimp it like this, water comes out still, right? Unless you really crimp it, but it's not going to be a very good flow. So it is a giving and receiving channel. It's just constantly going around, giving, receiving, giving, receiving. So one of the principles is giving, but also it's not giving to the point of exhaustion or where you don't receive. So I often use the example of give with an open palm. So if I'm giving with an open palm instead of a closed palm, I can receive. But when we give, we have to give with a pure heart. The Bible uses this example. I love the Bible for examples. It says, don't let the right hand know what the left hand is doing. Why? Because if we give with an agenda, right? If I give and I expect something back, then I'm not going to get it, because that's not circulatory. That's manipulative. Yeah. So if I give, and I love to use this example for people if they want to start giving, give someplace. I like to do this in the park or a neighborhood, or leave money someplace where you know somebody's going to discover it. But it isn't about being there to see them discover it. I used to go out and drive around the neighborhood and fill envelopes with cash and then just hand it to the person that I could see on the street and drive away, but purposely not look in the rearview mirror to see what their reaction was, because that's still an attachment. So when we give with an open palm, the right hand does not know what the left hand is doing. We don't have an agenda. That's true giving. But when we have an expectation, I don't know if you've ever given money to something in an organization, people do this and they're like, I don't like the way that organization is run. I'm like, once you gave the money away, it's God's work now. It's not mine. Yeah. So it is a circulation, give and receive, give and receive, give and receive. And people block the receiving channel probably more than the giving channel.
Yeah. It's kind of like when you tithe at a church and you think, oh, now I'm going to get, tenfold.
Right.
That's what they told me.
Because it says it somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So
it does happen though, but it's also the intent with which you give. Like if I'm giving going, okay, I'm going to give this $10 and I better see $100 show up. Right. Then that's not the intention. The intention is I'm giving from just the overflow of my love in my life, and then let it go. You don't even think about it anymore. It's as if it didn't even happen. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's the intention.
It's all the intention. Yes. So we only have a couple more minutes. What brilliant, wonderful suggestion could you give our audience today that helps them to invest in themselves and have pure intention and all of that good stuff? What would you say to somebody?
I say that the first thing you want to do is just start with every day. I think it's so beautiful that abundance is time as well. And we all get the same 24 hours. We all get it. Nobody doesn't get 24 hours. And so how are you investing in that 24 hours? Begin your day with, is this investing for me, or is this taking out of my soul? And that begins with how you wake up. What is my intention for the day? How am I being grateful as soon as my eyes open? How am I grabbing my phone? Is that the first thing I do? Am I creating energy that is an investment type? Am I meditating? Am I praying? Am I thinking positive thoughts? Am I setting the intention for the day? Or am I picking up my phone and doom scrolling? Like, oh my God, the world is falling apart, right? How are you setting your intention for the day? That really is the very first thing that I recommend for everybody, is we set our day and our life as soon as our eyes open. And then when you go to sleep, set that intention as well. What am I going to create while I'm in this beautiful sleep state?
That's great. So tell people how to reach us. Show us your book.
Okay. The Rooted in Wealth book is this, and it is on Amazon as well. But I think the best way to get any kind of information from me is go to my website, thedebbiedobbins.com, and you can get the Inner Billionaire for free and the Rooted in Wealth. Once you sign up for the Inner Billionaire, then it will be sent to you as well. So it's just an opportunity to get all of this for free.
Thank you so much, Debbie. Keep up the important, beautiful work. And thank you all for watching. And I'll probably have you back on again because you've got a lot to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Roy.
See you all next week.